Glad you're here. Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14, one of my favorite parables in the New Testament. One of the most exciting experiences that ever happened to me in my life, I was at LAX. Now, this is before I had seen any other part of Southern California or any part of California. Robin and I were living in New Zealand at the time, and it had been a long trip for me. I had been on a bit of a speaking tour here in the U.S. On my way back to Auckland, New Zealand. I want to tell you, that is a long flight. You board a Qantas jet at around 11:55 at night, so you're already tired and cranky. And so you board the plane. It's about 13 hours over the water before you arrive in Auckland. It's a real pain, and I never looked forward to it. So here I am. It's late. I'm by myself. Robin and the kids have already made their journey back. I stayed back to do some speaking. I come to the gate. I put my little boarding pass in that, the agent, it takes it and puts it in that little machine, and it just pops right back out. And he puts it in, and it pops right back out. Puts it in, it pops right back out. He goes over to talk to another agent. They're whispering in each other like they don't want me to hear, like if I can't tell you're talking about me. You come back over, he keeps doing this, trying to put that ticket in. Finally, he comes back over, puts it in, comes back out, and he says, "Mr. Vines, I'm afraid you've been bumped to first class." Now, here's the thing about that. I had never ridden in anything other than economy. I didn't go to business. I skipped right over business, right on up into first class. And if you've ever been first class on a Qantas jet that has the big bubble, you don't only turn left, you go up the stairs to where the very special people. It was an amazing place. Now, this happened because Ruth Turnbull was the managing director of Qantas who lived in New Zealand, and she had done this as a surprise to me. So I want to tell you, oh man, once you go first class, you don't want to go back to the cattle cart. I'm telling you. You don't want to do that. So I go over there. There's a guy with a bow tie. He meets me. He says, "Mr. Vines," he knows my name now. Can I get you? Because he doesn't know I didn't pay for first class. That's the beauty of it. So he treats me as if I'm somebody, all right? He says, "Can I get you a newspaper? How about a magazine?" And I just said, do you have Golf Digest? "Oh, yeah, sure, I'll get that for you." "What? You got Golf Digest?" Then he says, "About every 15 minutes, can I get you something to eat? Can I get you something to drink?" And he didn't show me a menu. It's like whatever I asked for, I could have. So I took the big plunge and asked for a Diet Coke and a Hershey bar, which is a big thing for us who fly in cattle cart, especially today, right? Especially today. But he kept bringing me this food and this menu that had fine dining on it. I mean, I was so happy. I mean, the menu, we're not talking about now salt-free, sugar-free, taste-free tofu. That's not what we're talking about. The good stuff with the real fat in it tastes really good. And I sat there in my chair, incidentally, that folds completely back with the cover that comes over top. And you can sleep the whole way, but I was afraid to. I was afraid I'd miss something. And so I stayed awake. And every 15 minutes, and you have this own personalized video screen. You could watch I think like 20 movies, and you didn't have to wait for them to start it. You just started it and stopped it when you wanted to. It was beautiful, the way flying ought to be, in every class, all right? But here we go. I'm seated there, and I just start laughing. I mean, it's funny, it's humorous. I'd never been here before, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking, just a few hours ago, I was grunging around in my backpack trying to find a granola bar, and now here I am with chocolate cake and steak, and I mean good steak. And you can order as much as you want of anything. They never say no. It was great. It was beautiful, and I deserved every bit of it. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus tells a great story. It's wonderful. It's convicting. It's not about a first-class flight, though. It's about a first-class banquet. And he's talking about, or using this as a metaphor for the kingdom of God, what life is like with God. Now, I want you to hear me. I want you to take this as coming from a pastor who loves you, okay? This is going to be hard. It's difficult for me because even though this is my favorite parable, it's the one I violate the most. And I'm sure we violate it together, and I want to make sure we leave getting it. So here's what happens. Let me paint the setting for you. You go ahead and look at verse 15. We'll get there momentarily. Jesus is seated around a table with some pretty pious people, self-righteous men. And all of a sudden, one of them says, "Blessed is anyone who sits at the table with God." Now, this is something you would say in first century before you ate. It's kind of like a prayer. But you would expect a pious answer in return. So you would say, "Blessed is anyone who sits at the table with God." Somebody would say, "May we ourselves be considered worthy." But in this group, these self-righteous people, they were snickering under their breath. They would be saying, yeah, as if any one of us around the table is not worthy. Yeah, right, we're worthy. Now, Jesus knows what they're thinking. That's the trouble with having dinner with Jesus. He can look right past your words into what you're really thinking, and for most of us, that's not good. And so he launches into a story about a banquet. And as he does so, we discover the heart of God for your life and for our church. Here's what happens in verse 17. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, come, everything is now ready. So the time of the banquet has come, but in Jesus' story, the unthinkable occurs. This is a great banquet where the king is lavishing generosity. All kinds of stuff there, the best of everything, and people start actually making excuses why they can't come. Look at the first guy. He says in verse 18, I just bought a field and I must go and see it. Now, land in the Middle East is limited and at a premium. No way you're going to buy a piece of land before you see it. That's the equivalent of us saying, hey, I just bought a house over in Glendora. I'm going to go see it now. Does it have any bedrooms? Is there a kitchen? Is it large enough? And does it have a garage? Both the host and the guest know this is bogus. It is meant to be a direct insult. Not trying to hide it. This is meant to insult the host. Then there's another guy. He says in verse 19, I just bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me. Now, this also is ridiculous. When you're going to buy some oxen in the first century, you go to the marketplace or the individual who's selling them, and the first question you're going to ask is, does the team work together? If he says no, you leave. You're not going to buy them. If he says yes, then you take them for a test drive. This is ridiculous. It's like saying, I've just bought a car, and I've spent a lot of money on it. Now I need to go find out the year, the make, and the model. You're not going to do it. It's just ridiculous. It's meant to insult the guest, or the host, rather. And then verse 20, which was an eye-opener for me this week. I don't know what your translation says. Here's the actual Greek translation of verse 20. It says, still another said, I have married a woman, so I can't come. It's interesting. That gets a laugh every time, and it wasn't meant to. But it was good for me to find out that for over 2,000 years, men have been using their wives as an excuse for not doing something they really don't want to do anyway. It's the equivalent of saying, my wife won't let me come, or my mommy won't let me come out and play. Here's the deal. None of these are legitimate excuses. They just don't want to come. And here's the question, why? Why would you not want to come to a first-class banquet where there's awesome food and extravagance and generosity? This is the equivalent of saying when you get to the Qantas gate and your ticket pops out, you say, I'm bumped to first class. No thanks, I'll ride in economy. Now, stay with me. Here's what Jesus is implying. Have you ever found yourself somewhere where you realize you didn't belong? I mean, you just don't belong here. This is not my group or class of people. Now, in the late 80s, I was invited to attend the All Africa Conference, and the ambassador of the United States to all of Africa had asked me to give the invocation at this July 4th event, and they sat me right next to him. I'm from Tennessee. We still eat with our hands back there. And they brought me so many pieces of silverware, and I found out that each of them has a specific responsibility, none of which I understood or knew. And I felt totally lost in the conversation and the food and all the stuff that was brought out. My wife was trying to help me because she's traveled all over the world. It was embarrassing to her and to me. I was a nervous wreck. As soon as I sat down, I realized I was not in Kansas anymore. Now, here's what happens. In the Middle East, when you send out an invitation to attend a great banquet, you only send it to your class of people. You send it to those who can have a reciprocal party, who can have you a party and invite you to it. And they'll bring you nice gifts, and they can help you climb the corporate ladder. They can give you whatever it is you want. You scratch their back, they'll scratch yours. You don't invite people of a lower social class. Now, when the Messiah comes, there's a great banquet associated with his coming. And the righteous, religious, self-righteous people just knew they would be invited to the banquet of the Messiah because